back with another edition of Console Classics. On this episode, I'm talking about Dead Rising 1 and 2. In 2006, Capcom released Dead Rising, a third-person open-world zombie survival game that takes place in the fictional town of Willamette. Basically, a photojournalist named Frank West comes to town on a helicopter after the city breaks out into chaos with it being overrun by zombies. He gets dropped off onto the roof of a mall and is given 3 days until the helicopter can return to rescue him, which is called 72-hour mode in the game. During which time, he attempts to uncover the truth about what happened there. So yeah, it's basically Dawn of the Dead, the game. As Frank, you can wander around freely in the mall, visiting all the stores and beating the hell out of zombies. Anything and everything is a weapon. You can use axes, swords, handguns, any small piece of furniture, hell, even Mega Man toy blasters. But all weapons have a shelf life and eventually will break. Anyway, as you traverse the mall, in addition to zombies, you encounter psychopaths, deranged citizens who act as bosses that you must defeat. Some battles are tough and some are not. As this is happening, there's a main storyline going on as well. And this is tracked by time. You're alerted to certain events and have to be at a certain spot by the time they start. If not, you'll miss that event and it will change the course of the game. This is true for side missions as well, but the side missions mainly deal with rescuing survivors, so the worst case scenario there, if you miss those, is the survivor will die. Throughout certain stores, you can pick up books to read that will increase the durability of weapons and make smoothies that increase your health. Also, you can earn prestige points that level you up by rescuing survivors and taking them back to the security room for safety, and by taking various photos of just whatever really. So, once Frank enters the mall, zombies breach the door and he's almost killed. During a showdown between two guys, Frank is rescued by Agent Brad Garrison, one of the gunmen, who takes him to a security office for refuge. Brad is after an elderly guy named Russell Barnaby, who ran and hid in a bookstore. Brad gets injured by the other gunman while saving Frank, and Frank has to go out to get him medicine. He heads to the supermarket, where he meets a woman who seems quite shady. And after you acquire the medicine, you learn from Barnaby about a town in Central America called Santa Cabeza, where drugs were being distributed that turn people into zombies. A bit later on, the woman is seen again on the security camera, and Frank questions her, finding out that her name is Isabella Keyes, the sister of the gunman who shot at Brad, Carlito Keyes. Isabella tells Frank that she'll arrange a meeting between him and Carlito. Later on, at the meeting, Carlito freaks out and shoots Isabella before fleeing. Then, she reveals that she was a researcher at a facility in Santa Cabeza, where they were experimenting on cattle using a native species of wasp to boost the cattle's performance. She also mentions that the facility was ran by Barnaby. One of the wasps got out, and instead of doing what it was intended for, it zombified its host, causing the military to wipe out the whole area. After you learn about this, Barnaby gets infected and turns, nearly killing Brad's partner Jesse. A while later, Frank learns that Carlito's plan was to use the mall as a staging point to release the wasp out of revenge for what happened to Santa Cabeza. Frank, Brad, and Carlito engage in a shootout, ending with Brad getting mortally wounded. Then, Carlito is kidnapped and killed by a psychopath. After that, Isabella is able to shut down the bombs carrying the wasp and stops Carlito's plan. But the military shows up to purge the area, and Frank's rescue helicopter crashes before he can be rescued. So once you survive the 72 hours and complete the missions properly, you go into overtime mode, where Frank gets infected and has to create a cure. Meanwhile, you face off against Brock Mason, the commander of the cleanup crew and the same guy that wiped out Santa Cabeza. In the end, you knock him into a crowd of zombies. Then, once you finish overtime mode, you can play Infinity Mode, where you can traverse the mall freely without any missions or time limit. But your health rapidly decreases, so you must constantly keep eating. Also, the psychopaths in this mode are more aggressive. Part 2, which came out in 2010, follows Chuck Greene, a former motocross rider in Fortune City, where yet another outbreak has occurred. This one has the same gameplay as the first game, basically, But now you can construct your own weapons, which you learn about with various cards you earn. And you can use vehicles now. Run them over with cars or motorcycles equipped with chainsaws. Oh yeah, and you have a daughter to look after. Yes, Chuck has a daughter named Katie who's been infected. But now there's an antiviral drug called Zombirex that you have to locate and administer every so often, or else she zombifies. So add that to your to-do list. 5 years after Willamette, Chuck is in Fortune City to take place in a game show called Terror is Reality, where the contestants kill zombies for money. Chuck attempts to win the prize money, but the game is interrupted by a zombie outbreak. The survivors hold up in a shelter until the military is set to arrive in, guess how long? 72 hours. Chuck then ventures into the casino to search for Zombirex, where he runs into Stacy Forsythe, a zombie rights activist who befriends Chuck and helps navigate him around the area. Chuck returns with Zombirex and hears a news report stating that Chuck caused the outbreak. So he tracks down the reporter responsible, Rebecca Chang, and offers her the truth about what happened. From there, you have to survive for 72 hours, same as the first game, while finding out who really caused the outbreak, fighting off psychopaths and rescuing survivors. A bit later on, Chuck and Rebecca find out that TK, the host of Terror is Reality, caused the outbreak as a distraction while he robs the 4 biggest casinos in the city. After TK is captured, he reveals that someone else caused the outbreak and paid him to frame Chuck. So then, after the 3 days are up, the military shows up and a strange green gas starts billowing from underground, making the zombies even stronger. The military gets wiped out and the new plan is to wipe the city out by firebombing it. Around this time, TK gets bitten and has to rely on Zombirex just like Katie. Chuck discovers that Phenotrans, the company that created the Zombirex, is actually behind the initial outbreak and are stationed underground in a facility. They intentionally release the gas to increase the number of queen wasps in the area, therefore creating more zombies. And the more zombies, the more people get bitten, and the more people get bitten, the more they need Zombirex. So, yeah, smart business strategy, I guess. Then, Chuck kills the main scientist and Rebecca attempts to release the information to the press. But she's killed by Sullivan, a friendly security guard who is actually an operative for Phenotrans. Chuck follows Sullivan to the roof where an intense battle occurs. Sullivan attempts to flee using a skyhook, but gets ripped in half instead. And at this point, Chuck releases the info to the press in exchange for a rescue helicopter. In the meantime, TK kidnaps Katie and Stacy and challenges Chuck to a fight, ending with Chuck hurling TK to his death. Afterward, the 3 escape. These 2 were great games with an original concept. Well, almost original. Anyway, there's even a part 3 and a part 4 that are more recent, but definitely give them a try if you haven't already. Alright guys, thanks for watching this episode of Console Classics. And of course, I'll see you on the next one.